Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It is March 23rd. The Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup is back. Round one is not quite halfway through. First day of round one is complete. We'll talk about that from last night. Bunch of games today. We'll take a quick look at those as well. World Cup qualifiers tomorrow. The United States is at the Estadio Azteca for honestly what could be the last World Cup qualifier. With the proposed format changes going forward, it could be the last time the U.S. is at the Estadio Azteca in a situation like this, with more teams making it out of CONCACAF in future World Cups and in 26, likely the U.S. and Mexico and Canada all going through as hosts out of CONCACAF. This might be the last time a game at the Azteca has this kind of meaning. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what is being said so far on both sides of that match. Other matches worldwide, qualifiers all over the world, starting early tomorrow morning in Asia, Oceania. Big games everywhere. We'll get you set for all of that. We've got Atlanta United 2 tonight as well. Looks like the Storms will pass by the time we get to that kickoff, with the Tampa Bay Rowdies come into town, one of the top teams in the USL Championship at Fifth Third Bank Stadium in Kennesaw. But last night, it was the return of the Open Cup, and we had the magic of the Cup take place in a few places. It didn't happen in Florida. The Villages, who were favored by a lot by the odds makers who knew a lot about the Villages, obviously, won 6-0 over Orlando FC Wolves. Goals in the 12th, the 21st, the 41st, the 57th, the 63rd, the 84th. Probably could have been more. They hit the post a couple times. The Villages will play those Tampa Bay Rowdies in round 2 in St. Petersburg. Another blowout, and one of my new favorite teams in the tournament, Oyster Bay United FC out of Oyster Bay, New York. They won 3-0. That game could have had some red cards either way. It got very, very chippy as Oyster Bay went to Hartford, Connecticut, and blew out Hartford City. They face Hartford Athletic next time around. Oyster Bay's only been around for a year, a very, very new club. Had a couple of comebacks. Defeaters Kicks out in Texas came back to win 3-2 over Denton Diablos. That game had the biggest controversy at the end of the night with a Denton shot on goal. It was in at least the last 5 minutes. Cleared off the line with an elbow, and it was very clear on the replay. Denton players furious. Then one player commits a horrendous tackle after that, yelling about the elbow off the line. Referee didn't see it. AR didn't see it. It was, I believe, on the elbow was on the opposite side of the AR, so they couldn't see it. And that player then argued to the referee, who sent the player off. So it finished 10-9 in that one because it's a Texas rivalry. What are you going to expect?
It's the Cup.
It's Texas, Jared. It's not even just the Cup. But it should have been at least an opportunity for Denton to level it from a penalty very late. I think it was actually stoppage time. And it should have finished 9-9.
Denton played 30 minutes up a man, 20 minutes up a man. And then one of their players, after wiggling through on an attack, after getting the ball tackled away from him, kind of like stepped back and stepped on a guy's stomach and got sent off.
Ribs, yeah. I was trying to start with the headline of the elbow of God off the line and then work down, because there was a lot of things in this game. But
is that what Randy Savage had? And we just
the magic of the Cup is bigger in Texas.
Yes. No. The Defeaters gets the win 3-2. Yes, that.
It's a great name, by the way. Defeaters, D''feet.
It's not. There's some great names in the tournament. That's not a great one. I can't agree with you at all there. I do like their white kits with just DKSC across the front. That's cool. Westchester United was down 2-0 to FC Motown, who had 3 former MLS players in their lineup. 2-0 at halftime for Motown. Westchester came back with 2 goals in the second half, got a third in extra time. They held on to win 3-2, so they will advance in the Cup. Cleveland SC got a 91st minute stoppage time goal to level it and send it to extra time, then won it in the 108th 2-1 over Chicago FC United. Cleveland's goalkeeper made 9 saves on the night. He was the 2021 NPSL goalkeeper of the year. And the last game of the night started late because of storms out in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Southern States SC, the home team, won 3-1 over the Georgia Revolution. 3-0 lead. Karim Tamimi pulled one back in the 82nd, but 3-1 finish for Southern States. And they will move on to face Birmingham Legion in Birmingham in round number 2. Hectic night, fun night, lots of good goals, some really good goals in this tournament, some controversy, some chippiness, some cards. It was a great return to the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. I'm glad this tournament's back.
No doubt. And you mentioned in just a couple of minutes all of the things that, we always talk about the magic, the hashtag magic of the cup, whatever you want to do. But all of the different matches seem to have something that was there with it. And whether it was weather in Hattiesburg, whether it was added time, whether it was elbows of God, these kinds of things. That's why this is a microcosm as to why we love this tournament for varying reasons, just the excitement that's attached to it. So let's see if day 2 can match day 1. That's my goal here.
Jarrett, you were watching stuff last night in the Open Cup. Anything else jump out to you?
I mean, it's the first round, so I don't want to read it too far into it, and it's hard unless you've been following these teams closely to really make a grand judgment. So nothing really jumped out to me because I don't follow a lot of these teams that closely. Just the chaos, like the Denton and Defeater situation with the elbow of God. Man, that was tough on the Revs. You're already having to go to Mississippi, and then you have to go play in a game where the weather's delayed and it's tough. It sucks for the Revolution. Selfishly, because this is a nationwide tournament, I want to see as many Georgia teams in it as possible. So I hate that the Revs are out of it, but it sets up for some very interesting second round games. Like now you're talking about Southern States going to play the Legion. Now you're talking about the Flying Bison of the Villages. Go look up their logo. It's basically Appa from Avatar. And maybe they'll play legal players. But they dropped like a 6 spot last night on Orlando. And who knows what they'll do with Tampa. This is the second round is where things will get a little bit weirder and you'll start to see some upsets. And you can laugh depending on how you feel about some of these USL teams that might get punched in the face.
Yeah, Tampa's one I'm not too worried about getting punched in the face, but there's some who
Not
could.
really, no.
Tampa's got a bunch of veterans. They got
Tampa
a bunch of guys with over 100 games of play at USL Championship level, guys with MLS experience. They should be okay in the situation. We'll find out. We'll see how they handle it, because sometimes you see teams rotate lineups and they struggle when they get into that second round where it's the pros versus the amateurs. These are all amateurs, NPSL teams, USL League 2 teams, who neither one are really normal right now because they don't have their college players that'll join them for their upcoming summer seasons. You also have the local qualifiers who are in it. I think what jumped out to me last night, it's 6 games, so you can't really make too many big statements about where things are. I love that 2 teams in their first time in the tournament, their second year of existence in Oyster Bay and in Southern States, get wins and continue to move on. I think you're seeing more growth at this level of the game in the country than ever before. And we talk about the growth in MLS, which is real and which is continuing to grow. And we'll see if Vegas is team number 30 here at some point, and then who's going to be 31 and 32, because I think there will be a 31 and 32. Talked about the growth at the USL Championship level. Teams coming in, Detroit City moving over and coming in, Monterey Bay coming in. You've got more teams coming at that level, we think. USL League 1, bunch of new teams. NISA, new teams. MLS Next Pro, you've got St. Louis City who's going to be in this tournament. You've got the team in Rochester that's going to be in this tournament. And then NPSL, USL League 2, and below, it's all growing. And it all needs to grow. And there's room for all of it to grow. And I think at times what you have seen in this country is way too many turf wars, whether we're talking youth, whether we're talking amateur, whether we're talking lower level pro. There is a market for all of this. There's a market for defeaters in Texas to do what they do and develop players the way that they do and play at as high of a level as they can reach. and there's a market for FC Dallas in Texas. And one doesn't trump the other one in terms of not being important, not being viable. There's room for everybody. And this tournament's going to show that as it continues to grow and gets more exposure. It was great to pretty easily be able to watch everything last night. ESPN Plus had 3 games. The YouTube page for U.S. Soccer had the other 3 games. Everything started fine. Didn't see any major broadcast snafus. Everything was good. Good level of production on the YouTube games as well as the ESPN Plus games. It was really enjoyable to watch. And thanks to everybody who's hanging out on Twitch and doing the watch along with me on that. We got a bunch of games today in the tournament. We won't have a watch along, obviously, because John and I will be doing the Atlanta United 2 game. But you've got games all over the country tonight. The West Coast gets involved. The Midwest gets involved. We got more games all around the South and the eastern half of the country. So we'll know the second round matchups by the end of the night. Those games will be April 5th, 6th, and 7th. When the second round is completed on April 8th, that's when the draw, including the MLS teams, comes into play. And just so, because the questions came up last night, and I was trying to grab as many answers to these as we could as it was going. You're going to continue to see, Jarrett mentioned pro teams getting punched in the mouth by some of these amateurs in the second round, and that'll happen. But I think where MLS teams come into the fray is where you will see some different approaches to the tournament. You'll see teams take this thing really seriously. You'll see teams not really be able to take it as seriously as they would like. You're going to see teams who are coming off of CONCACAF runs, NYC and Seattle. They're going to have an extra 6 games under their belt by the time they enter the tournament in CONCACAF play. One of them is going to have a couple more. That's a lot of miles early on. They might have to go a little more second choice in this. Flash forward to next year. You're adding Leagues Cup into the mix. That's going to be a distraction for some MLS teams. Not all of them. And that's going to happen after the Open Cup starts. But you're going to see teams take different approaches in this event going forward. And that's okay. And John, you've seen it watching your beloved England, where you got teams who take the League Cup seriously. Manchester City won it a whole bunch of years in a row.
Yep.
You see teams don't really care about the Leagues Cup. You see teams not be in a position to take the FA Cup seriously and have to punt sometimes. You see teams put everything into those games if they're in a safe spot and they make a run and they actually sacrifice league games. Every season is different for every club, and there's not one way to approach everything.
Right, and I think that's the fun part for those of us who, A, have a team that's in it, and you get to see all of the different dynamics in play, but also for those of us that don't have a team in it, that just enjoy a tournament format where we can sit there and root for the underdog and root for the new guy as much as we root for a favorite that we might sit there and follow for one reason or another. And I think that all of these different levels and all of these different additions that we have, whether it's more teams, the Leagues Cup, all these other different tournaments, I think that it's going to really add to the level of excitement of Open Cup because of all of these different angles that you have to kind of account for from a viewing perspective and from a rooting perspective. I think it's going to be fun the next couple of years to see these new faces like we got to see last night and see them advance. I mean, Oyster Bay is going to have a common enemy in the city of Hartford going forward as a friendly rival because Oyster Bay isn't playing just one team in Hartford. They go from Hartford City to Hartford Athletic next time. And so there's that added element now of just showing up in the tournament, and now you get that kind of intrigue. I think it's going to be fun the next couple of years.
Yeah, I was kind of wanting to get into the approaches of teams, and Jarrett, let me toss it over to you. So you're going to see it this year too. And I think NYC and Seattle are going to be 2 teams that might not be in a position to take the Open Cup as seriously as some other MLS teams. We already heard from Gonzalo Pineda when the season started. He wants to win the Open Cup. We know Seattle generally puts a lot to it, but this year with a deep CONCACAF run, that's going to add more miles to their legs. It's going to be a little bit harder for them. You don't have Leagues Cup yet, but you add that into the mix next year, and I think you're going to see a variety of approaches in the Open Cup. I don't know what this year looks like for Atlanta United. I think a lot of it's going to depend on who they play. And
yeah, I think it is.
If you get an amateur opponent, for example, maybe you do play some of your younger professionals a little bit more in that game. If you get a Birmingham Legion, if you get a Charleston Battery, if you get a top USL Championship opponent, you're going to have to go a little more full strength if you want to advance.
Yeah, it's going to matter like who you get and where you get them. Being able to play someone at Fifth Third Bank Stadium or Mercedes-Benz is different than having to maybe go on the road to play in Birmingham or go back to Charleston, which is something that has happened every year we've had the Cup. Hopefully Charleston gets locked in a cage with Charlotte, and they can deal with that for a while. I'd like a break from that because I'd like to see some other teams, whether that's Birmingham, whether that's Tampa, whoever it might be. You're hoping to get that first draw that's favorable to you and then lay out a path like you had in 2019 where you were able to lay it out in a way that you saw, okay, if we go do this, cool, we're good. You beat Charleston. All right, cool. Then you got St. Louis. You got a pretty good path. Then you had to go on the road to Orlando, and Orlando was kind of in a weird spot, and you got it done. But you knew that if you got it done, you had a home game for the championship. Like you'll see how the path can lay out for you, and you want it to be favorable. To your point about Seattle, yeah, I mean Seattle's going to take the Cup seriously. They are one of the most serious teams about the Cup. But if I was them, I'd be leaning harder into CONCACAF Champions League and seeing what happens with the NYC game.
Well, but timeline, Jarrett. Like when they come in, because they don't come in the third round, they will come in the round of 32. So they're going to come into this later. Yes, they split where the MLS teams come in. This is why this stuff's really important to nail down because they'll know at that point. I don't think it's no. There's nothing to fight. That's a good thing. What are you talking about? like that's a good thing.
We'll see. I like the format we had. Let's see.
What's the complaint? I don't understand. Because they split the MLS teams and when they come in?
A little bit. I want to see how it plays out.
Why is that a problem? Explain it to me. Other than you don't like change.
I don't like change.
Okay. I think you have to change it now, Jarrett, because
you have so many teams.
Yes. Well. That and I think you do need to take into account CONCACAF. I mean, look at what you have just to run through it a little bit. 10 in PSL, 10 USL2. That'll probably go back up once we get back into normal seasons for them and figure that out. 11 local qualifiers. The National Amateur Cup winner comes into. That's the first round. So 10 in PSL, 10 USL2. That's 20. 12 more from local qualifiers and National Amateur Cup. That's 32. Those winners go through. 23 USL Championship teams, 2 MLS Next Pro, 10 NISA, 11 USL League 1. That's everybody in round 2. Round 3, you get all of those winners, 31 of them, and 17 MLS teams. Round 32, you get the 24 winners from the third round, plus the other 8 MLS teams. Then you play down. You have to kind of create a break somewhere just because of numbers. And I think the way they're doing it actually makes a lot of sense. The round of 32, those teams will come in for games May 10th and 11th. When you look at the CONCACAF schedule, I don't think it's so much prioritizing CONCACAF. I think it's the effect of CONCACAF on those teams. Now, the one who moves on to the final might have to prioritize, to be honest. But the CONCACAF schedule, I know all this is complicated. That's why we go through it a lot on the show. Semifinals, April 5, April 6, April 12, April 13. That's the dates for it. We already know the dates for Seattle and NYC. The final will be first leg between April 26th and 28th, second leg between May 3rd and May 5th. So they'll play, they'll be done. Whoever goes through to the final out of Seattle NYC will have played 8 games more than any other MLS team at that point in CONCACAF. And then they'll go into the Open Cup. So they could definitely be a spot where it's like, you know what? Christian Roldan, in addition to national team, has played 8 more games than your average MLS player. We might need to sit him in this and give him a day off. And you might have to bet on that a little bit more. So we'll see about them. The break in the MLS teams coming in, the teams that come in the second group, Seattle, NYC, which we talked about, Sporting Kansas City, Portland, Philly, New England, Nashville, Colorado, based off last year's records. That's who is coming in the second group. Everybody else from the U.S., not the Canadian teams, they got their own tournament. The U.S. teams come in the third round this year, a little bit earlier than usual.
And as long as you do it based on the merits of the season before, I can live with it.
Yeah, and that's
as long as you're not pulling names out of a hat.
No.
Let's just, you know what? It's St. Louis's first year. Let's just throw him in the fourth round. Make it merit based. You did well last year. Cool. You get to come in a round later. You don't potentially have to fight a rabid Wolverine in round 3.
Well, you're pulling the teams who had CONCACAF, so that's part of your reasoning here. And then the next number of teams that you need to make brackets work and make everything fit. This stuff will evolve a little bit year to year because you're going to have more teams in all the lower groups. So when you add more USL Championship, you add more USL 1, NISA, MLS Next Pro, more independent teams come in there. Then though the pro teams come into the tournament, they don't have to qualify. So when you have a new team come into the lower division league at the pro level, then you've got to adjust your brackets down the road, and you've got to adjust your brackets for the amateurs coming in. Because the amateur level, the NPSL, the USL2, the local qualifiers, UPSL is going to be arguing, I would assume, to get automatic qualifiers here as well. When you get more spots there, then your bracket changes and evolves. So you could have fewer MLS teams come in later. You could have more come in later, depending on how the numbers work out for brackets.
But I could also see, with the addition of Leagues Cup and MLS teams, that second group that we're talking about, the ones that are introduced later on merit based. I mean, I could see situations in future Open Cup years where those teams that aren't playing as many games, you mentioned just as an example, Seattle, say, playing 8 more matches, those teams that aren't as active in Leagues Cup that are out early, or the teams that aren't involved in CONCACAF making the deeper runs in Open Cup because they're choosing those first choice lineups for their own matchups.
I think we always say this stuff, but the timelines don't work out.
Yeah.
You have to remember the timeline. I would assume that Leagues Cup is going to be in a July, August kind of time frame. A lot of your early rounds in Open Cup are done. A lot of teams are going to be out by then. So, maybe if you go out of Open Cup early and you don't have as many games under your belt, do you prioritize Leagues Cup? Sure. A lot of it's going to depend on the draw, too, for some teams. I mean, this is normal. And Storm Chaser Kevin says, my fear is that the MLS teams say to heck with it, stop caring about it. Well, tell that to the Premier League too. And tell that to Copa del Rey and La Liga teams, and tell that to the Bundesliga teams. And that's life. The big teams do have to prioritize competitions, and they do worldwide. That's not an MLS thing. That's not a US soccer thing. That's just life. And you're going to go for the trophies you feel like you have the best chances to win. Go ahead, Jared.
And therein lies the issue with a team like, for instance, a San Jose. Some of these other teams that are not expecting to compete for playoffs in MLS, if they can find themselves a cup run, especially a team like San Jose with the way they play, if they can just catch you for 90 weird minutes. It would have worked better for them last year because they were a more complete team. But these teams that are not expected to make the playoff run to lean into the cup and say, okay, if we get a favorable draw, we need to just, punt everything. We're just going to go for this. And until we're out of it, then we can readjust. But this should be what we're going for, because this is our chance at a trophy this year. This is our chance to make a dent, because we are not a playoff team as it stands. And a team like San Jose, I'm trying to think who else would be a Toronto. Oh, Toronto, sorry, they're in the Canadian Cup. They're not
like a Houston.
Like a Houston.
You can go through. You can pull out a bunch of team names. It's more the idea.
The idea is, if you're not expecting to, if you're not sure about your playoff aspirations this year, or your playoff realities versus your aspirations this year, go for the cup. Do it. And I hope, and to Kevin's point, I hope everyone does take it seriously. They won't, but I can sit there and hope that all day long.
Yeah, but it's not. And again, I'm Kevin. I'm not picking on you. I want to make this clear, but this comes up with this tournament a lot more than it does in some other countries about taking the cup seriously. It happens worldwide that some teams don't take the cup seriously, and generally those are teams who are going for bigger cups. And nothing against the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, but it's not the MLS Cup. It's not the CONCACAF Champions League. It won't be the Leagues Cup because there's going to be more money on the line. You want teams to take it more seriously, put more money on the line. That's going to be part of it. A CONCACAF spot is on the line. That's good. That's a good thing. That's really good to have at the end of the rainbow for the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. But $300,000 to the winner. You want teams to be ensuring they're going to take this more seriously? Bump it to $1 million bucks to the winner of this tournament. Yeah, then your San Jose's who are like, well, we're probably not good enough to make a run in MLS and win MLS Cup, but can we win 5 games? Yeah, we can do that. $1 million bucks? Cool. Let's do it. Sell a sponsorship to it. That's what a lot of competitions do. Sell a sponsorship to it, put that towards prize money. These are the things that are going to have to happen. But I do always push back because I think in this country, sometimes in the game, we think that everything's so unique and different and weird, and it's not like anywhere else. Cups are cups. And if you are an Atlanta United, which we can speak to the local perspective here, you are going to have to prioritize at different points. But the timeline doesn't always make it a straight line in your priorities. You make a run in the tournament. Let's say you're coming out of CONCACAF early in the season, like 2019. Okay, you played 4 games in 2019. Your first Open Cup game, maybe your first couple, if I remember right, you didn't take it super seriously with first choice lineup completely out of the gate. You rotated some guys in. You gave some guys some time. Made it, giving guys some minutes in the tournament, which you needed. Okay, cool. You got further in the tournament. You're in a good spot in terms of a playoff spot. Okay, let's go. All in. Let's go win this thing. You can do that. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions. If you're a team, and I'll tell you where a tough decision is going to pop up, you're a team that makes a run to the Open Cup. You're a team that is fighting to get into the playoffs in MLS, which can happen all the time. And you've got a league game on the weekend, and you've got an Open Cup game the following Tuesday or Wednesday. And you got to figure out, do I go first choice in the league? Do I go first choice in the cup? Can I go first choice in both? I got this guy who's banged up. Where do I prioritize his minutes? And it's not a saying that the cup doesn't matter. It's not trashing the Open Cup if they have to take the league more seriously in situations. It's just the reality of managing a season. And it's complicated. But if U.S. Soccer, which owns the Open Cup, wants to ensure that more teams take it seriously, put more money to it, sell a title sponsorship of the tournament, and put more money to it. Now, you got to find somebody to cut the check. You got to find that. You got to grow this. You got to continue to grow it. These are things that have to happen. But the Open Cup today is in a better place than it has ever been. By far, not even close. There's no comparison. You couldn't find games in the first round back in the day anywhere. You didn't have any information about teams. You would have a coach on the bench turning their laptop around to use the laptop camera and putting that on Facebook. That would be how the game would be broadcast. You would have teams who would not be able to travel for games. You had all kinds of stuff like that. It's bumping up. You're still going to have issues. You got a bunch of very small clubs who are in this right now. You're going to have issues with teams who don't take this as seriously as they should for valid reasons and invalid reasons. But man, we're in a really good spot with this. It's really exciting. And I think it's only going to continue to go up. Tom makes a really good point here about teams that, and going back to what you said, Jarrett, about teams that are not good in the regular season, but put a priority on the cup. DC United 2013 is the prime example. They were one of the worst MLS teams on record. 3 wins on the season. They won more games in the Open Cup than they did in the MLS regular season. They were horrendous. And they went to the final. They went out to Salt Lake City in the final, and they beat RSL. Nobody expected that. And they went on to CONCACAF the next year. And they got much better, and they added a bunch of pieces. But worst team in MLS, one of the worst ever. And they won the Open Cup. Magic of the Cup. They went on that run. We'll see. Byrne says, I think MLS teams have already shown they don't care about Leagues Cup. Byrne, it's all about to change, man. When everybody is in the Leagues Cup and it is blown up big with more money on the line and all the things that are coming in 2013 or 2023, we're having a completely different conversation about Leagues Cup. So push everything, even this year's Leagues Cup, push all that to the side because it will not be the same thing. I'm sorry. I think in English language media and conversation, there is a gigantic underestimation of what the Leagues Cup will be when it turns into everybody participating across both leagues and the schedule stops for a month. Yeah, it's going to be a whole different ball game. So that's going to change. Let's see what else we got. Lots of funny comments. Alex, Houston, when did they win the Open Cup, or did they win it? I think they made the final maybe in a bad year. It happens. And we've seen it in other parts of the world too. Wigan got relegated, won the FA Cup that year. That's what a cup can do for a team. And if you are a team that MLS gives you a lot of leeway with a playoff system. But yeah, you can go for the cup and you can go for the league as well. You can say, well, we're in a bad spot in the league. We can put everything into the cup. Well, we're in a good spot in the league. We're comfortable. Our playoff spot's pretty secure. We can still go all the way for the cup when we're at that point. But the schedule allows you to stagger things and figure things out on the fly and adjust. You know, you might have a bad league season and make a run in the cup and say, we're all in. We're going to prioritize that over league games. But the money will also help make that decision. And that's something I hope that U.S. Soccer does. 2018. Thanks, guys. Houston won it. It's a magical thing, and it's an exciting thing, and it's an opportunity, I think, from an MLS perspective and from a USL Championship perspective to a lesser degree, for teams to give young guys meaningful opportunities. They can get chances to play in meaningful games with pressure on the line. And we've seen this worldwide in cup competitions where that's sometimes where you see these guys for the first time and you see them make a big mark. Brandon Vasquez wouldn't be doing what he's doing right now in Cincinnati if he didn't have those Open Cup games under his belt here, where that was his opportunity to really get significant minutes. Absolutely made the most of it. There's a place for it. It's not MLS Cup. That's fine. It's, in my opinion, bigger than the Supporter Shield, but that varies depending on who you are. I think the Leagues Cup, when it
Especially
grows into it, everybody will be there. Yes.
You could have made that argument when the schedule was balanced. I will not accept that argument today.
Yeah, the schedule was never really balanced, but it's became less important. It just has.
Okay, more balanced. When you were at least playing every team in the league.
Right.
Now you got some teams that get to go play, some bottom feeders out west or out east, whoever it may be, and other people have to go play teams that are going to compete for a Supporter Shield. It's a nice trophy. It's cool, and I hope fans enjoy it and celebrate it. And I will not begrudge anyone for getting a hold of it and celebrating and having fun with it. It does not. It is the third most important trophy as it stands.
In my opinion, it is. And I think it'll be fourth when the Leagues Cup comes in. And Tafka, overreaction Monday is not Wednesday, but I don't think the Leagues Cup will be a disaster even on formats. There's plenty of format things I would like to see. There's plenty of format situations I would like to see, but no, I'm sorry. Maybe I drank the Kool-Aid. I don't know. I really feel like Leagues Cup in whatever format, as long as it's not a single knockout, will be one of the most interesting things that we'll see in the world of soccer. I really do, because nobody else is doing this worldwide. I think the competition between MLS and Liga MX will be very good, very exciting. And the idea of taking a break in the league schedule, it'll have a lot of different ramifications. It will, for teams that make a run in the Leagues Cup, look, it'll be lucrative. It'll get your way into CONCACAF Champions League. There's lots of elements there. Teams that go out early, if you play 2 games in a group or play 3 games in a group. I've said many times in World Cup formats, and I know there's been talk that the Leagues Cup would model after the upcoming World Cup format, that it'd be 2 games in a group. I'd rather see 3. But if it's 2 versus 3, I don't think that automatically makes it a disaster before it's even started. This is just what we do in the game. We tear ourselves down before we even get anything started. I do want to see that tournament be as big as I think it can be. I think it's going to be bigger than anybody's expecting, for sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm just excited about it. Maybe I'm, overemphasizing it. I don't know, but it won't be the Leagues Cup that we've seen so far because it's not. And
I'm
it's just
hoping
such
it's
a
like
unique format.
I'm hoping it's like the Atlanta Club America game was in 2019, where people
Yeah.
go into it as this will be fun. They're taking this seriously. Oh God. Oh,
Well,
okay.
no, what I hope is that people will listen going into it and not say, this will be whatever. They'll go into it and say, this is going to be legit. That's what needs to change. And look, that's on MLS. It's on
It
Liga
is.
MX. It's on whoever the broadcast partners are. There's got to be an explanation about how big this is because this should be a bigger deal. Campiones Cup that year should have been a bigger deal. I talked to a lot of people. I know a lot of people who gave up their tickets and were like, no, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And they regretted it. That was a great match. That was a great night of soccer at the Benz.
My concern is that you're still going to get people who will ignore those words, and what's going to happen, and this is just the way of the world, and we can work on fixing this later. They're going to have to see it to realize. You can tell them until you're blue in the face that it's going to be a big deal, but they're going to have to see it for themselves to go, they're taking this is a big deal, and that'll be exciting when it happens.
No, get out in front of it. You want to be a trendsetter?
Yeah, absolutely. You should.
Get out in
That
front of
doesn't
it.
mean you shouldn't try. I
No, I'm gonna.
I am concerned. You should absolutely try. It does not mean you don't try, but I am concerned that people will just kind of shrug it off. But you should still try. Don't take that as me saying don't never try. Try.
No, trust me, Jared. I stopped listening to you a long time ago.
That just means you're paying attention. You're
Yes, exactly. Nah,
because if you'd have listened to me, you'd have been excited about San Jose in 2018 as well.
I didn't.
And you weren't.
No. Look, it's. I don't know. We're kind of going into a bunch of different stuff here, which is fine. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday. Things happen. I'm excited about what all of these things will do for an upcoming season. Now, one question, Michael Head says, too many matches already. I thoroughly disagree with too many matches already. I can't disagree with that more. What MLS teams play compared to what other clubs around the world play, they play a smaller schedule. They play a schedule that is the same size as what Germany plays with less teams. That's why Germany plays 34 in their regular season because they have an 18 team first division. Everybody else plays 38. You've got the English Championship, which is one of the drunkest things ever with all the teams they have in it, playing 46, which is crazy. And then they have a Leagues Cup and they have a FA Cup. I know it's not the same as our Leagues Cup. It's different. I got it. You're going to play potentially, which is not guaranteed. Let's say it's guaranteed to start from that. 34 games in a regular season. That seems to be pretty settled here. You're going to play an Open Cup game. You might get bounced to your game one. You have no guarantee of playoff games in MLS. You're going to play 2 or 3 Leagues Cup games guarantee in a group. That's it. You're still at that stage. You're not playing more games than a Premier League regular season is. If you advance in the Open Cup, you add more games. You could add what? If you go in right now in the current format, you go into that third round, you're playing 6 games. So, okay, let's go to the maximum side of things now. So you play 6 Open Cup games on top of your 34 regular season games. I don't know what the Leagues Cup exact format will be, but I believe that, let's say it's 3 group. Let's go max out everything. 3 group stage games, a round of 16, a quarterfinal, a semifinal, a final. That's 7 more. So that takes you to 47 plus MLS playoffs. That takes you further. There's no guarantee of CONCACAF, by the way. And this is where we get back to priorities because everybody does that where it's like, okay, well, if you go in and you go to the final in every competition and you do this, how many times does that happen? And if you don't have the depth for it, you probably punt on the Open Cup or you might punt on the Leagues Cup. Might play the kids there. Okay, that's what you got to do. So 47 with Leagues Cup plus the MLS playoffs, which could get you another 4. That's 51. Plus CONCACAF, if you're there, if we're going to go full max out, that'd be another 8. Okay, that's the absolute max. My guess is a team that is looking at that once they get into the season as where it could be, you're probably going to punt on Leagues Cup because that's going to be later in the year. You'd have already advanced pretty deep in the Open Cup. That's probably where you're at. But even that's not too many games if you compare it to a Brazilian team. That's not too many games compared to a Premier League team that's in Champions League. You don't have the League Cup portion of it, the Gummy Bear Cup portion in Spain or in Italy, but you have Champions League. And look, Champions League's about to add 10 games in the first round. And I think Europa League and Conference League is going to do the same thing. So blow that out of the water because you're going to have a bunch more games there. What you have to do, and we've talked about it, the number of games I don't think is a problem, even on the max end, because you're going to have to prioritize. You're going to have to create more mechanisms to have a deeper roster. Whether that is playing more guys like they've added now from your second team who are on pro deals. The academy portion of it, look, kids are going to have to make decisions. Do they want to keep college eligibility? Or do they want to sign a pro deal with the second team? And you're going to see more players sign pro deals than ever before in upcoming years, I think, because the money's there. The opportunity to make a living is there. There's more places to play. But you're going to have to give mechanisms for those players to be able to participate like we've seen the rule change this year. And it needs to continue to expand. I think 2 games is not enough. I think 4 rosters is not enough. That doesn't include Open Cup or Leagues Cup, by the way, though. So keep that in mind. That's MLS games. I think it should be 4 to 6 MLS games is the max you can play. And you could still be able to play an Open Cup and Leagues Cup. Managers are going to have to use that. When you get into those situations in other parts of the world, Pep Guardiola has done it. Jurgen Klopp has done it. Sometimes in some of those early cup games, especially the Gummy Bear Cup. Now, Manchester City's prioritized that thing because they're crazy. They want to win everything. You've seen a lot of rotation in the squad. That's what you have to do. And that's what it's going to be. And if you got to take a chance on a younger kid, well, if they don't do it, then you're out of that competition and you don't have as much schedule compression, do you? But I just don't want to be scared in American soccer anymore with this stuff. Growth is good. More games is good. I want less of an off season. That's why I think Leagues Cup being in the schedule is a good thing, because it means you're probably going to start where you started this year in general, late February. You'll take a month off in the regular season. Your playoffs will probably run to mid-November, I would assume. I mean, what I hope they do is have MLS Cup about where they had it in the past in early December. I know this year's different because of the World Cup. Have it in early December. Take that month off in the middle for Leagues Cup, which some teams will use to rejuvenate and rest. Some teams won't. That's up to you. Make your decision. But then you'll have a shorter off season. Shorter off seasons work in other places. We can do that too. The Players Association is going to have to agree to it. And you're going to have to negotiate that in the CBA, and you're probably going to have to pay them with adding Leagues Cup and all of that to it. Leagues Cup has been agreed to. It's going to happen. But if you're going to have a shorter offseason, you're probably going to have to pay up more money. You should be making more money. So that's how these things work, right?
I was trying to do the math in the Twitch pitch and trying to figure out maximum schedules and things like that.
Didn't we just do that?
Yeah. And then you're chasing like in the mid 50s to the high 50s. If you're a top club, chasing Champions League.
Europe, in Europe. In your beloved England.
In my beloved England. So okay. 38 regular season, 17, I think, if you're in Champions League, plus cups and things like that. So it can be managed if you make the financial allowances for it.
Not even just financial. If you commit to playing your kids as well, that's not financial. Last time I checked, John, it's not. If you're playing your kid from your bench or from your academy in a Gummy Bear Cup game, you're not outlaying a whole bunch of more money to do that. It's the kid who's there already.
Yeah, and Pep Guardiola has done that at Manchester City.
And MLS teams need to be empowered to be able to do that. Now, they can't do it with the academy because of college eligibility.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. But they should be able to do it with guys from the second team who are on pro deals. If you're Atlanta United and you're in that situation, you should be able to go into an Open Cup game, and you can now. You can now. And you should be able to do it in league games later in the year if you have to, and more of them than 2. But you can play Aiden McFadden. You can play David Mejia. You can play Vicente Reyes. You can play, obviously, Efrain Morales because he's on MLS deal. But you can play those guys. You can play Robbie Mertz. And you're going to need to in situations. Good. MLS teams have to do that. They have to change the mentality because clubs in Europe do.
And to
That's
your
not
point,
outlaying more money. That's just committing to doing it.
And to your point, they also have to have the mechanisms that will allow those kinds of things that won't penalize you when it comes to your MLS roster in these kinds of competitions going all the way across the board.
What are you being penalized for on your MLS?
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking that you weren't allowed to call folks up for certain amounts of time for Open Cups and other competitions.
No. This is where we get misinformation going a lot. And Ricky, it's kind of applies a little bit to what you said. You're not putting misinformation, but to clarify, the league has expanded the usage of players from your second team this season. It did not get a lot of play before the year. We talked about it with Aiden McFadden. You don't have the injury emergency call-up situation anymore. You can call guys up for MLS games. You could always call them up for Open Cup and friendlies, and Leagues Cup will fall into that, barring something really weird. You can call guys up who are on pro deals. The reason why you can't call up academy guys is college eligibility purely. That is unique to American life structure. That's an NCAA thing. That's not an MLS thing. The NCAA, for some reason, draws the line at playing in MLS matches for those guys and anything affiliated with an MLS First Division team. But they let them play in the USL Championship, and it doesn't affect their college eligibility going forward. I don't know why that would be different for MLS. It's one level up. It shouldn't be. If you're going to let a kid who's not currently in college, by the way, to be really clear with this, let's give the example of Grant Howard, who is probably going to play for Atlanta United 2 tonight. He is not a college enrolled person. So he can play as an amateur in USL. He can play in those games. He cannot play as an MLS player as an amateur. That's not allowed. My understanding is down to college eligibility of that. That doesn't make a lot of sense. He's an amateur. Once you enroll in college, you can't play in those professional teams at all. That's why you have NPSL, UPSL, USL League 2, where those guys can keep their college eligibility and play in the summer. I can somewhat buy that. Once you've committed to college, you can't then moonlight playing in pro games. I can somewhat understand that. But before you enroll, it shouldn't affect your college eligibility. Right now, it does. In official games, you can't play with your MLS team. You can play in preseason friendlies that don't count, but you can't play in official games. That's something that probably MLS and U.S. Soccer and the NCAA need to sit down and sort out. Because I would like to see those guys given the opportunity. And Jared, I mean, it's probably a wider sports conversation too, of giving guys an opportunity to make a living earlier and at least find out if they're ready to make a living before they go to college.
Yeah, it's giving guys that opportunity, but I mean, it was already pulling teeth to get the NCAA to get to where they are right now, and that conversation is going to be a tough one. It's one that's going to happen though, and eventually their hand will get forced. I hope it happens, and I hope we get another instance where the NCAA has to go in front of the courts and make an argument that is just so absurdly weak and nonsensical that they get laughed out of the room, because that was a lot of fun, and I'm not ever going to get tired of that. I'd love to see that kind of situation again as far as MLS goes. Otherwise, if you start expanding out more of these games, more of these tournaments, you want them to take it seriously. At what point and how much do you do it to loosen the shackles on roster construction and roster rules for teams that want to go for it? How much leeway do you give it? I mean, do you keep it as a salary cap league, but do you raise the roof and institute a floor? Do you
Okay, you're taking it to a whole nother place, which I'm with you. You do have to expand your cap. You do have to grow that. That's something that
Oh
has to
yeah,
happen. But
this is just a
that's
branch
not.
coming off the poison tree.
Yeah, leave that branch for a second. Let's go one thing at a time because there's two levels to this. I think everybody zeroes in on that side first when we're talking about Leagues Cup and taking the Open Cup more seriously and all that. When I don't think that's the first step. I really don't. I think the first step is twofold. It is one, not having academy players lose their college eligibility by playing with MLS teams in this competition. They should not lose that eligibility. I don't believe they're able to play if you're an academy player with a USL championship team. I don't know if you can play in this. If you're an academy player before you've enrolled in college, that should change. You should be able to call a guy up if you've got a bunch of injuries and you're going into round one of the Open Cup and you're playing an amateur team that you feel pretty comfortable about and you don't want to push Joseph Martinez, you should be able to play Matthew Taylor before he goes to Georgia State. You should be able to play him. Give him a game. See how it goes. Reward him for all the work he's put into your academy. Give him an opportunity there. Pep does it. Big managers do it in these cup games. Do it. Give teams the ability to do it. That's the first level. So you got to be able to let those guys play, and then the managers have to commit to it. Because the other side, because we talk about depth all the time in MLS, these Open Cup games are where you got to find out if you've got depth or not. I think what Atlanta's done with their roster this year, you have demonstrable depth. But if you're some of these other teams and you don't know if this guy's ready yet, play him in the Open Cup and find out. Commit to that. You can't gripe about match compression and then not rotate your squad. You're not. That's not a valid argument. You're arguing in bad faith when you do that. Yes, long term, and going to Jarrett's poisoned branch that he jumped out on. This needs to continue to grow faster than it is. Increase the cap. You're nowhere near where it can be right now, I think, realistically. I am down with some kind of a floor. You can look, there's people a lot smarter than me and can go into this a lot deeper than this show can do right now in terms of what your salary structure would be. You've got plenty of cap leagues to look at what works, what doesn't work, what can adjust, what can fit, what needs to be tweaked, what doesn't apply. You've got a lot to work from. Do it and start to reimagine that aspect of it, including all the things we talk about all the time about eliminating all these different categories and usages of GAM and this and that. Like, make it simpler, make it more transparent, obviously make it work for what you need it to do. And if that means you have designated players, but you have a larger cap with everything else, cool, whatever. If you take acquisition costs out of cap hits, which is something that I would like to see, cool, figure it out. But more than anything, to keep it simple here this morning, you need to allow teams to spend more money to have more talent on their rosters overall. And this is more of a Leagues Cup thing and a CONCACAF Champions League thing. Because to compete on a more regular basis, what does it come down to? Who's got the best players? How do you get the best players? You spend more money. A lot of MLS teams have more talent than a lot of Liga MX teams. That is far more prevalent than people think it is. There's a lot of Liga MX teams you can look at and say, "Oh, buddy, they would not make the playoffs in MLS." It's not, only a couple that are bad. There's a few, but the top end is still a little bit further past, and you can spread the money differently. And this is something that MLS has to explore, even with the designated player idea. And Jared, I know you've got to go, so I'm going to give you the last word on this. More than just adding and having a floor and all that stuff, I would like to see MLS create a mechanism that if you decide, you know what, I want to spread my money around more rather than having three guys at the top, say I only want to have one guy at the top, does that give me more of an ability to dump money back into the cap if I'm not going to sign those designated players? Figure that part out so you can be like some of these Liga MX teams that maybe don't have a guy making more than $2 million a year, but have 8 or 9 guys making $1 million a year. And you have a more of an equitable spread across your roster because some managers will build a team that way.
Yeah, they will. I mean, the thing is, I guess, is right now you're in a situation where you have MLS teams that are trading blows with Liga MX teams.
Straight up.
As it stands. So open it up some more.
Yep.
Like, look at this as hey, we're able to trade punches right now. We're not consistently going to win every single one, but we're at least able to stay in the ring for 3 rounds. And that's progress. Free it up. Let guys come up from that second team, provide more flexibility for that roster, provide flexibility, as you talked about, with the way people want to build the roster, but let teams pursue their roster build how they want to. And I promise you're seeing the same thing in baseball right now. You're starting to see more and more pressure from players. Atlanta legend Jock Peterson this morning, lashing out at a couple teams for spending $30 to $40 million on their payroll versus other clubs spending. It doesn't have to be $200 million. You don't have to be, you don't have to be flying past any luxury taxes. That's what you
wisely instead of just spending it haphazardly. There's a difference.
There is.
Well,
yeah,
no,
right.
There's a difference in being able to spend a whole lot more than everybody else too, though, John. It's not just spending wisely.
It's spending, period. Like, trust me, there will be pressure on clubs to at least hit a floor, whether you install a floor or not, and how you do that. But free it up. Let teams build the teams how they want to. Loosen some of it. I don't know how you would do this because you're probably unmaking rules to make new ones, and MLS is weird. Like, again, there are flowcharts for MLS rules with rosters and how money works.
Yeah, it's logical to figure out where you are, but you're probably going to have to unmake some stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? It's but it's kind of like, I guess for me, it's kind of like, I think it was Shirley Franklin who talked about, like redoing the sewer systems and the infrastructure in Atlanta. It's something that needs to be done, but damn, I don't envy anyone who has to start the process on it, because it's going to be kind of messy at first, and it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of dedication and a lot of getting out in front of stuff and explaining things to people over and over and over again. But I think it would be for the best if you are able to loosen things up, let teams build how they want. And yeah, like I said, I think there will be the pressure to at least hit a floor. And if you're not hitting the floor, you won't be competing if you loosen it up like this.
But frankly, I don't think that affects the Open Cup very much, which is where we started this conversation. I think you need to affect the other side more of giving teams the ability to use their second team more in an Open Cup and games that they deem a lower priority. That could be some league games too. It needs to continue. That needs to open up as well as the spending. So it's growing on both ends.
And yes, everybody, Rochester Rhinos were the last non-MLS team to win the Cup, and Jamie Vardy came and ruined it.
He did. He changed. Well, the Rhinos, frankly, Jared, to be fair, the Rhinos died a few years ago.
To be fair.
They haven't played in a long time. It's almost Silverbacks-esque in that they're Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's, except in this case, the Silverbacks were dead and were propped up by league money, and they really were Bernie. Like,
yes,
the strings waving a hand.
It was zombies.
Yeah, Jamie Vardy created Frankenstein out of what used to be the Rhinos, and now he's called it something different.
All you had to do was bring him back as the Rhinos. You could have.
I agree.
Logo, you could have done new branding. I'm very disappointed that he.
Absolutely,
I'm disappointed he chose not to use the Rhinos name because it is a legacy.
100% agree.
I think the last team. I think Charleston was the last non-MLS team to make a final.
They were. They lost to DC in 2008. Yes.
Yeah, sounds right. It becomes magical. Enjoy it. Changes that need to be made to it. We can have those discussions, and also it can be true. Goodbye.
The robots are taking you away.
That's the cue.
Bye, Jarrett. John, tell us about Eliminize.
I could do that. Eliminize service, proud sponsors of everything SDH. QR code over my left shoulder for those of you watching on Twitch for odor-free, clean, fresh air. One place you need to go. And it's Eliminize service. Deodorizing enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. They've created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors, including those like pet, cigarettes, and food. Realtors and property managers use Eliminize service to eliminate all bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. It's a turnkey process. It makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers. Kind to the environment, a very green way to get things done. No toxic residue whatsoever. Different than our favorite masking agents that we have under the sink. Because those masking agents, all they do They just cover up the odor. They don't attack the problem. Lemonize, with their special scientific formula, proven scientific formula, destroys odors down to the molecule. That's why it's different than your masking agents. Pricing easy one of two ways, either by using cubic foot or parts per million to come up with a price that's affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. If you have any other questions, frequently asked or otherwise, you go to their website, Eliminize.com. But do us a favor here at SDH. After the .com, go /Atlanta, so they know what part of the world that you have reached out from to ask your frequently asked or new questions of our friends at Eliminize. ELIMINIZE.com /Atlanta. Eliminize service for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Proud sponsors of everything SDH.
Nicely done. You went a little long, but not too bad.
Yeah, I got kind of caught up in my facts and tried to introduce too many facts into evidence.
A lot of facts about Eliminize.
That is true. It's a rather large sheet of information that we were given to discuss Eliminize, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, you probably could condense it a little bit more. But anyway, that's fine. It's fine. It's all good. Mike will be joining us in hour number 2. He is getting out of a meeting and will be joining us. Byrne was asking if he was in NYC last night. He was not. All the radio station business is keeping Mike very busy these days, but he is going to be on today unless things have changed since I traded messages with him, and it has not as of yet. So MLS's roster rules, spending, all of it is complicated. Duh. This has been going on for a long time. It's getting better. It is. I do think it's heading in at least the right direction in growth. That could go faster. There could be more simplicity in the format. Europe has decided to make things complicated. They will not create a salary cap, which is what some teams were pushing for. They are getting rid of financial fair play. That is gone. Tariq Panja at the New York Times has a breakdown on this. It is probably closer to what La Liga does with their spending cap, but it's tied to income. And I think in La Liga, it's tied to past and projected income. That's why Barcelona can't spend as much right now. What that does is it really locks teams into a spot. It locks teams into, oh, okay, you're making this much money. Well, you can spend this much. Oh, you want to have somebody come in and invest? Well, you're not making more money yet, so no, you can't spend as much. It protects the big teams. 70% is the magic number right now. Alexander Seferin wanted a strict salary cap. That was never going to happen with these clubs who have the power. Wasn't going to happen. He's talked about it for 5 years. Yeah, good luck. There's a vote of the executive board on April 7th. It will not be called financial fair play because they don't like that term anymore. Financial sustainability regulations. Okay. And this is a little depending on who you talk to and how things go. There are clubs currently that are on performance plans because of breaches of financial fair play. As many as 40, according to Panja. But they made like settlement agreements to keep playing in tournaments. Basically, like, yeah, we screwed up. Okay, how do we fix it? All right, we can't do this, or we have to do this, or blah, 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 blah. It's all minimal stuff. You haven't seen financial fair play rules actually enacted very heavily on big teams, with the exception of Milan, who I think what Milan did in their opt not to play in UEFA tournaments for a year was the smart play, because they didn't take these performance plans to be able to play. They said, no, we'll just fix it, and we won't play for a year. And it worked for them, and they're in a much better place now. You've had some of the PSGs and Manchester Cities be able to find loopholes with good lawyers who have gotten them out of trouble. Yep. This thing, according to the new system, and Sunil Gulati is actually involved in this. He is chairman of UEFA's revamped financial control panel. Under this new system with the 70% spending limit based on income, UEFA will have the right to impose both sporting and financial penalties for rule breakers, fines, threat of expulsion, and an option for demoting teams between their competitions. So if you're a Champions League team and you break that 70% barrier, they'll drop you to the Europa League, or they can. If you're Europa League, they can drop you to the Conference League. Okay. I mean, if they do it, that's fine. I don't think this really changes anything. And it's not because they didn't have teeth in financial fair play. I'm not going down that road. It's the same general idea it's been. La Liga takes it a step further. And this is where I would have liked to have seen UEFA go if this was the route they were going to go. In UEFA, or in La Liga, and we talked about this with Lionel Messi. We've talked about it with Barcelona a lot because their revenue went down. They also breached the rules over years, so they got dinged on how much they could spend in later years, and it's all caught up to them. They have a much lower limit of how much they can spend than Real Madrid, who has managed their financials very well and also has brought in a ton of money. I don't like that system, by the way, at all. That just ensures Real Madrid has more of an opportunity to win. It honestly creates imbalance in this format. Now, the idea of it ensuring that teams don't go bust is absolutely valid. But if you want to come in and invest in your team, you have limitations in how you can do that. I don't know if that's good for the growth of the game. That just protects the teams that are already big. We've had this conversation a lot. But in Barcelona, with the stricter rules that La Liga has, they could not register some players. They literally could not register them. Lionel Messi, they could not make it fit. He left. They had to move pieces around. They had to sign guys to new deals, extend them to get a lower hit to then be able to register a player. They had to move around it. It was strict. I would have loved to have seen UEFA do something like that, to where, okay, this is the roster you want to field. This is however much it is, whatever. Yeah, you're not within compliance there, Manchester City or PSG or Real Madrid or whoever. You can't register these players for UEFA competitions. I don't care what your domestic does. I would have loved to have seen them do that. They didn't. They basically did the same thing, put a new name on it, put a number on it, but even the number of 70% has some leeway and this and that in it, probably whatever, 10 million or so you can go over. And if you go over a little bit for a while, you're probably not going to get punished too severely. So you're probably encouraged to actually go over the 70%. If you can spend it, you will. But if you're a big team, you can get out of it. It just, nothing has changed. They're just reterming it. La Liga is the way that would have fit the way that UEFA is doing it. Because I never saw a real salary cap like we see in the United States come into UEFA competition. But La Liga is the one that they could have at least created serious teeth in limiting how much teams could spend and go over these numbers. And they didn't do that. They opted for soft penalties, and it's going to be about the same as it's ever been.
I think it's a gradual introduction to the 70%. It's like it starts at 90 and works its way down to 70.
You needed to do that because of the pandemic anyway. Like, that part I don't have a problem with, because you shouldn't have cut spending across every club in the world or every club in UEFA in this situation, because clubs lost money during the pandemic, so their revenues dropped. So you shouldn't make them spend a whole lot less when they project that it's coming back and they're going to have more money down the road. And like, they shouldn't have to go slash contracts, for example. So I'm okay with the gradual. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine.
But I still, no matter what UEFA does when it comes to FFP turning into FSR or whatever alphabet soup you want to attach to it, I still will envision those top clubs. You know, we've talked about Manchester City and PSG sitting there and working through loopholes. I still see the top clubs that will be in these competitions finding ways to avoid that 70%. They'll underreport revenues. They'll figure ways to get around it. I just don't anticipate this being a whole lot of change, despite UEFA coming up and saying, here's our new thing. I still think that it's going to be the status quo when it comes to the top clubs getting around the rules.
It's not about getting around the rules. It's about ensuring that the top clubs are the top clubs. I don't care about getting around the rules. Like, everybody's been doing that anyway. It's to ensure that you don't have new big clubs. That's what this is. This is the big clubs protecting themselves. That's what it's always been. Why did you have a lot of the outcry about Newcastle's new investment?
Because everybody who's the big club, the top club, doesn't want anybody new at the table, because you're taking away that extra percentage of what was yours. You don't want the new guy there. You want to keep what's yours.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's all this is. That's all financial fair play was. It was all about saying, like, no, we're not going to allow this to happen this way. And it just protected the teams who were already there. So for as much as MLS, you want to do this, you want to do that, playing too many games, this and that. They're adding more games in UEFA. They've got a dumb spending limit thing. You got teams wanting to break away and create their own thing with the Super League. Go read the stuff about PSG and Real Madrid playing and the just back and forth between their leaderships, because PSG took a lot of the leadership in the European Clubs Association when Real Madrid left it, because Florentino Perez was that guy and had all the sway and the power. He wanted to go do a Super League. So then PSG became the team that had a lot of that, because they said they weren't going to do a Super League. And you've got that hanging over everybody's head. as big time sports have a lot of issues. MLS is no different. UEFA is no different. But I think UEFA and what it's doing, I don't see light at the end of the tunnel with this. I see them getting more fractured. I see them taking away more from the local leagues. I see that happening. Maybe it's inevitable. Maybe it's inevitable for the big clubs to focus more on that. But I think in non-Big Five leagues, it's had the biggest effect. I think there's just not a lot of compelling competitions in Europe, to be honest.
And that was going to be my next question. When do you think the discussions become in earnest for Super League 2?
They're already going. Like they're going on in earnest now. They've been going on in earnest since Super League 1 publicly said, yeah, we're going to stop doing this because this is dumb, because we messed up in our launch. But there was never a stop. So that's going to continue. We'll get Mike Conti into this in just a second. Like, to ensure more compelling competitions, you have to have some kind of equitable spending limits. You don't want to stamp down how big teams can be and having great players and all that, but you've got to find that limit to where teams can be competitive at that level. Big teams can still spend a lot, but other teams can be competitive. The other thing too is the American format with playoffs does create a lot of that a normal league season doesn't. So there's a number of things that UEFA is going to have to look in the mirror about, and I don't know if they do. Just like MLS, there's a number of things that they're going to have to look in the mirror about as they continue to grow and figure that out. But in terms of being compelling as a lot of teams have a chance to win the title this year, I think MLS has got that better than any league in the world. Any league in the world, I think it's compelling. I think people who do get sucked into it enjoy that. What MLS has to do more than anything, to me, first, beyond roster rules, beyond anything, is get more people sucked into following the product and engaged in these stories. And one person who does a great job with that is going to join us right now. Mike Conti on the show. What's up, Mike?
There's no way you're describing me.
Yes, I am describing you because it's very important, because we've been very blessed in the last week or so with people reaching out who are new fans, who heard a radio broadcast, heard other guys on the radio station talking about Atlanta United, and went to a game for the first time. And that stuff is something that Charlotte's dealing with it now. I've talked to Jess about it, and people reaching out about now they're engaged and they're going to games. And they're learning about the league, and they're getting stuck into everything around it. That's got to continue to grow around the league for that next level to happen, because the compelling nature of the competition is there. Mm-hmm. It can get better. The level can get better. All those things, put more money to it's going to get better. But the structure in terms of compelling competition is great, but more people got to get hooked on it. And there's got to be more exposure.
Yeah. And you know what I think is interesting, guys, is it's great to see that the expansion markets like Charlotte and Cincinnati and obviously Atlanta, Minnesota, the expansion markets, the recent expansion markets have done a really good job of growing the game quickly in those markets and getting the buy-in from, I'll say it, casual sports fans in those markets. I think, one of the real challenges that the league has to solve, and some of its clubs in particular, is some of the legacy markets. The league's got to find a way to get Red Bulls in New York City on the same footing at least as the Islanders and the Devils. I don't know if it's possible to ever get on Yankees footing, but you've got to at least get on the same footing as the Islanders and the Devils. I think out in LA, you need to get Galaxy and LAFC on the same footing as I just realized my microphone is off. Could you hear any of that?
Yeah, you sound good.
Oh, good. Okay. Jeez.
I don't know where your mic's coming through, but it sounds good.
Okay. Boy, I have a weird setting here then.
It's like a little echoey, but it just sounds like you're in in the room I think you're in.
I think I know what has happened. Pardon me. I'm going to make a very quick change. Excuse me. Hold on one second. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah. You were audible before. It just sounded like you were in a big room. Now it sounds like you're into a
so for some reason I was on my laptop, like internal microphone, and not my. Yeah, well, it's a good laptop.
I was impressed.
You were fine.
Anyhow, well, hopefully this is better now.
This is better.
Okay, good. No, so look, I mean, you've got to find a way to get your New York teams on equal footing with some of your National Hockey League teams in that market. Same with LAFC and LA Galaxy.
The LA teams are closer. The LA teams are in pretty decent spot. Maybe. I think they can continue to grow, but their teams
aren't competitive, so that
it's not even that. I think the Galaxy have won a lot. Yeah. LAFC has had a lot of hype, and they've won a lot early on. I think they're in a good space. The New York teams, especially NYC, after winning the championship, you haven't seen that bump that should have.
No, and New England is another. I mean, that really concerns me, and I know they've had some weather, but New England.
I do chalk it up more to weather in New England, honestly.
I hope so. But I think this is the challenge that the league's got to figure out. You're doing great in Atlanta and Charlotte and Nashville. You're doing great in Cincinnati. You're doing great in Minnesota. You're doing awesome in Austin. Like, all really, really good things to see. You're not doing as great in New York and New England and Houston and Dallas, although Dallas had a pretty good crowd this past weekend. You're not doing as great in the San Francisco Bay Area. You're not doing quite as great. I agree with you. I think the LA teams might be kind of a large market exception. But my point is, some of your legacy markets are not on the same interest level right now as some of your newer markets. And that's something the league has got to figure out. How can we make Major League Soccer as big in Chicago as it is in Atlanta? And that's tough. I mean, I think
is not stink on the field, which they have for a while. But now that's changing.
That's a big part of it. But
it's a huge part.
I think, and you guys know because you've worked in the broadcast industry, when you lose an audience on a TV station or a radio station or whatever, it's very hard to get that audience back. And that's the thing that concerns me about Chicago, because Chicago has not been very good the last couple of years. Did they lose an audience that's irretrievable? And you have to find a new audience now. And what are the challenges in doing that while you play in a 65,000 seat football stadium? So I think it's multi-pronged. I think and I see Tom Russo's comment on the Twitch pitch, and I think this is correct too. You've had some clubs do a tremendous job with community outreach and going out and doing the little things that you have to do to forge connections with your supporters' culture. Atlanta right at the top of that list. But there are other clubs on that list too. And again, I mean, I'll list them again. Austin, Cincinnati, Charlotte, Nashville have done excellent work. Miami has not. And Miami's an expansion team that has not made that connection. And there you see a little bit of a difference, obviously.
I'll give them
But
a little bit of benefit of the doubt with the stadium situation and getting into Miami proper.
I get that, but then my thing is delay your entry into the league like Charlotte did.
Yeah, I think
And I know there's
Miami had
still,
delayed it for so long. They
yeah,
kind of had to
Had
get
to
in the
step in.
door
Yeah.
because they were actually announced before Atlanta was.
right,
It's coming
right,
into the league.
yeah. No, it's true.
Miami's a unique situation.
Yeah.
Let's give a big success story, and I think it hits on a lot of the elements that you're talking about, and I'm talking about with putting the product on the field. Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia is a market that, look, it still is a hard market. It's a difficult one because it's a legacy sports market. You've got teams that have decades upon decades of history before the union, but we've talked about it. The increase, you've seen a steady uptick in the crowds with the team winning more.
Yeah.
And you've seen that steady uptick in attention. They're on radio now, which they weren't before.
Yeah.
They're getting hits on the big radio stations as well. They're getting more coverage in the paper. They have a great beat writer in Jonathan Tannenwald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've seen things continue to steadily grow, and I think a lot of it is down to the hard work behind the scenes, the meeting one fan at a time and converting them, but also putting a product on the field that gets results.
So Philadelphia is a really interesting example, and that's a club that I've watched very, very closely for the 12 or 13 years that they've been in existence now, because I'm from Philadelphia originally, as you guys know. So I've had a keen interest in the Union and how they have grown for a while. One of the things I'll tell you about Philadelphia Union is when they came into the league in 2010, they did great. I mean, they were selling out. They had an outstanding local television deal with the ABC affiliate, which is the powerhouse local TV station in that market. They were selling out. Tannenwald was with them then, was doing outstanding coverage of the Philadelphia Inquirer. I mean, actually, Philadelphia really kind of, and I don't know if it's a product of hard work that they did on the club side or what, but Philadelphia came into the league with really a very, very attractive setup as far as new stadium. Even though it was in a bad neighborhood, it was a brand new stadium that they were getting people at. They had media buy-in, and they did phenomenally well for their first couple years. And then, quite frankly, the product on the pitch was not keeping up with the level of business front office type things that you have to do to keep the club relevant.
It's a bad team for a long time.
Exactly. And look, Philadelphia fans can be very, very irritable and sullen, but they're knowledgeable.
What?
They're knowledgeable. No. But so here's an example of what I think we were talking about with Chicago. You know, Philadelphia came in, they had that initial burst of interest because they were the new thing and they marketed extremely well. Fans wised up to the fact that they weren't very good. It took them a long time to get that audience back, but the audience has come back.
Yep.
And I think that, Jason, that reinforces your point about some of these other markets that we're talking about, that you can get the audience back, but it does take a tremendous amount of time. And you're right, Jason. Philadelphia right now, I mean, heck, in 2018, I thought nothing of going to Philadelphia and playing there. And, you know, is that going to be a tough game and a tough atmosphere? Now, Philadelphia, suddenly, among the teams of the Eastern Conference, there's a feel to that stadium again.
Yeah.
You know, there's a vibe.
They have an
there.
identity. The team, the fan base, like everything about the Philadelphia Union, you know, when you walk in, if you're a player, you're going to suffer. Right. Because it's going to be a hard game. You know what they're going to do to you. You know how they're going to play. You know what you're in for. There's a lot of teams in the league that haven't created that identity. Chicago lost it. Chicago, and a lot of talk about Bridgeview with Chicago, and they moved back to Soldier Field, which I think ultimately is the right thing. But when they had a good product on the field, and they had Cuauhtemoc Blanco, and they were very close to winning things. They won early. They were new. You got a little bit of both. But when they had Blanco at Bridgeview, you had no problem getting people to come out and make that drive. You were winning games. You were an exciting team. When all that went away and they didn't make the playoffs for a long time, then it became very easy to not make the drive to Bridgeview. Just like in Philadelphia, it became very easy to not make the drive to Chester. Where I get worried in those situations, because those are different, and Chicago rectified that. They went back into the city proper. I think that ultimately the right thing. Where those situations worry me is somebody like a Dallas who at times, as we lose Mike, we'll try to get him back here in just a second. With Dallas, at times, they've had a good product on the field, but they haven't been able to convince people to come out to Frisco. Now,
Right.
maybe that was a long-term bet on Frisco growing faster, all of that. But that's where I get concerned. If it's a bad team and they're struggling to draw and struggling to get attention, a lot of it's being a bad team.
Mm-hmm.
If they're a good team and an interesting team for a soccer fan and they're not connecting, I want to know why. I want to find out the why there. If they're bad, people aren't going to come. But I want to go back to one other aspect of it. Sorry, as we jump around, Mike. It's a Wednesday. We do this.
Yeah, it's wall pass.
Yes.
It's all good.
You mentioned casual fans, and I think that if I could fix one thing in MLS right now across the board and could make this case to all 28 teams and to the league office, because I think all of that needs to change their approach to casual fans. Just like you said that it's hard to get fans back who have turned on the product. Casual fans will jump on faster. Casual fans is where you can grow the game faster. If there's a fan who already has their perception that it's not good enough, I'm going to watch my Premier League team on Saturday morning, I'm not going to go to the game, I don't like the level, I don't care. You're going to have to do so much work to convince them, is it worth it? Probably not, because they're going to show up when you're in big games, and then they're going to get their sample of it themselves at that point.
Right.
Where you can really grow is something Atlanta did really well early on. It's something that I think Charlotte is doing. It's something that the newer markets have had to do by necessity because you're brand new. Get those fans who are not the diehards watching the Premier League in the morning. Get those fans who their kids might play, who want to come out for a good experience, buy tickets, and get sucked in, and then buy season tickets.
Mm-hmm.
That's the change. And that's going to be the TV change too. It's the ticket buying change. The fan who doesn't have the Premier League team but watches the World Cup every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
The fan who his kids might have played. They might have played in high school, but they're not the diehard. That's the biggest change for MLS in this country, and you need to market more to that. I think at times MLS coverage and general American soccer coverage, it's too hoity-toity. We don't embrace the casual fans enough.
Well, I think it's that, and I also think that some of the American soccer coverage has been too negative on Major League Soccer.
Yes, 100%.
And I think that's a huge, huge problem when you have national people who cover the league who spend time demeaning the league. It's a huge, huge issue. You've got, and look, I'm not saying that you should construct narratives that you do not believe in, but I don't know. If I'm a national guy covering Major League Soccer and all I do is crap on the league, why am I going to expect people to read my articles?
Mm-hmm.
I've never really understood that. So that's another obstacle that the league's got to overcome, maybe at a 30,000 foot level, and that's got to start with the front office in New York City, really. But yeah, I mean, look, you shared that we've heard from some people who went to their first match this past weekend. Now they're hooked. I can tell you, and again, this goes back to Philadelphia. I mean, my dad had never attended a professional soccer match in his life, 65 years old. He came to our Atlanta United match in 2018. He's hooked. He goes now. He goes. And
I love that stuff more than anything.
And it's because of the game day experience. That's the other thing, too. Like, the product is good. Don't get me wrong. But I think what's hooked my dad is the social experience.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's something that I think Atlanta has done really, really well, is lean into the social aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
The whole pub partner thing is not just this kind of corporate sponsorship thing. That's a really, really important thing. Steve Holman, I'm kind of jumping around here.
No,
Steve Holman told me something that I blew me away. We were talking before the Hawks game on Sunday. He said, I was running errands Saturday during your match. I was listening to you on the radio, and I had to stop at the Alamo in Noonan on the way home. I think he had a carryout order or something like that. He said, "You would not believe how many people were in the Alamo wearing Atlanta United gear watching that match."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, and that kind of clicked for me. Like, wait a minute, I think there's been a lot of discussion about this next media deal and what it's going to look like, and a lot of rabble-rousing about narratives that are emerging about the media deal. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about social engagements here, social gatherings. People want to be together when they watch their favorite team. And that's something where I think Atlanta, and it sounds like Charlotte, sounds like Nashville, sounds like a couple other places around the league, have done an outstanding job of creating these kind of mini societies regionally and locally, where being part of the team and supporting the team has become a very important social experience. And by the way, it's not the same for every sport.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the same. So this is something that I think clubs and the league can really lean into, because that's what's going to get people hooked. The quality of play is good. We've established that. We deeply believe that. And that's not just me saying it. I deeply believe it because I've seen it. And I followed the league since night one in San Jose to where it is right now. It's 10 times better than it was when it was created. The level of play has absolutely evolved, and it's in a good place. But the secret sauce is finding that social engagement and making it a community experience. And that's why I think we're really lucky here in Atlanta, because the club has done a remarkable job creating that.
Well, Mike, let me take Atlanta out of the picture for a second. And to the point that you were making earlier, your legacy markets in Major League Soccer, TV markets 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 10. New York, Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Houston, Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Your growth markets right now, your newer franchises, Charlotte is 22.
Mm-hmm.
St. Louis is 23. Nashville is 29. Austin is 38. And I think that you're seeing that sense of community in these growth markets. And that's what you want as an industry and as a business on the collective for Major League Soccer. Any large entity wants those growth industries. And Major League Soccer is getting that with those 4 places. And you have to try to figure out that way to bring those legacy markets, those 6 top 10 markets, back into the fray.
Yeah.
Hopefully learning lessons from those 4 that are part of your growth markets.
And I don't know how you do it. It's tough. I mean, look, even in market 2, look at how the NFL has not really, made a tremendous TV rating splash in market 2 with 2 new teams there.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams and Chargers are still, and we're talking about one of those teams being the reigning world champions, to a large degree, they are still afterthoughts in that market. That is very much a University of Southern California and UCLA market when it comes to football.
And LA people think that the Chargers are San Diego's Chargers.
They'll belong to San Diego. Exactly. Yeah. So it is really, really difficult to be able to flip that switch in those major markets and make it work. But, John, you follow the National Hockey League. Las Vegas was an instant success because the NHL filled a void.
Yep.
That's a big market. That was a desire to have major league professional sports, and the community took to the Golden Knights unbelievably. Kind of like Atlanta United, instant waiting list for season tickets that they're still trying to go through 5 or 6 years later. They also, like Atlanta United, had immediate success, but they had every game of their inaugural season sold out before they even dropped the puck. Same in Seattle, by the way, right now. They had a full season sellout before they even dropped the puck. What does Seattle not have during the winter? The NBA. So the National Hockey League filled a void. That's why, like I keep telling people, I think there's this focus, like, oh, well, man, you got to get into Detroit because it's the biggest market you're not in right now. No, and I think Detroit would be a good market, by the way.
If you have the right ownership.
Right, but that's not the way you need to look at this. Go into markets where you can fill a void. Austin is a perfect example. Austin FC and the Longhorns basically own that town right now from a sports standpoint. That's a robust market. That's a growing market. One of the most successful NBA teams, in fact, two of them, the two most successful NBA teams in terms of attendance and local TV, San Antonio Spurs, Portland Trailblazers. You know why? It's nothing else in those markets.
Only game in town.
Only game in town. Portland, obviously now they have MLS, but for a long time they did not. It is.
But even in those, because I'm with you. Like there are certain markets that will have different advantages. There's others that have different challenges. But even in Portland with the Trailblazers, who owned the town for so long, when they were bad, they didn't have as many people showing up, and that's sports. That's just sports. Now, the Rams in LA, I would expect that they're going to sell more tickets next year than they did this past year because they won. That it follows that so often. Like you do have your heritage teams and histories, and we see it in college football in different places. We see it to a degree with your Red Sox, your Cubs, your teams. We're talking 100 years of history. We're talking about your dad, your grandfather, your great-grandfather went to those games. It's just something you do. You do have some of that. But even those, if the team is bad, it becomes really easy not to go. If the team is good, you're going to get an uptick. How do you take advantage of it? And that's where, when it comes down to having these opportunities to win, I think if MLS went down the road of a Premier League, of a La Liga, Premier League has more contenders, but it's still even then it's Manchester City and Liverpool that are outpacing everybody. If you went to that and you had just super clubs and it was only a couple that could win MLS every year, you're going to struggle in all of these different markets. If people think you don't have a chance to win, you'll see an uptick in the markets when teams win. Even New York City, is it as big? Probably not. There's other issues there at play. They're going to have to do it a little longer because New York's a little bit more of a, let's continue to see it. You got the Yankee Stadium issue as well. That's unique. But you see it in other places where when you win consistently, tickets get sold more. New England is an example of that. New England, it's really easy not to go. If you're a fan in Boston, if you're a fan in Providence, it's really easy to say, yeah, you know what? The team's not playing all that well. It's going to be cold.
It's an hour drive.
It's raining. Like, I don't want to go. I'm not going to go. But if they're winning and it's going to be exciting because your team's got a shot to do something this year, those numbers pick up. And then you're like, you know what? It's a little cold. I can wear a jacket. It'll be okay. It really comes back to the product on the field so often. And you have to have that right. DC dropped when the product on the field dropped. Yep. Chicago dropped when the product on the field dropped. Toronto dropped when the product on the field dropped. When it gets back to where those fans expect it to be, it'll pick back up.
And I think that and I would probably say the last 5 to 7 years, I think a lot of folks look at their disposable income. And if there's an opportunity to be a part of a community and it's a positive experience, they'll take that disposable income and invest it in those positive things. Where if you're in a market, you're attached to a team that you've been previously, and you have disposable income and the price point's too high, that it's whether it's one thing or another, the team is losing, you're not going to make those same investments that you have in the past, because there's that one reason or another that you're going to sit there and it's like, nah. But I think positivity and winning will lean you back into using that disposable income for those experiences over and over again.
And by the way, I think Jason touched on something that I really noticed with Philadelphia. But I think it's been the case in other markets too, where you do have to lean into youth soccer and the youth soccer culture, and you have to try to get kids who play soccer and their parents to come to games. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very important. I think, it's not a coincidence that in most cases, not all, but in most cases, the clubs that have the best academy structure right now tend to draw better than the clubs who don't. Not in every case. Not in every case.
You have more advocates for your program.
Yeah. Like Dallas, for example, has a really good academy, and they've had attendance challenges. So there are exceptions. But, Atlanta obviously has a great academy. and they draw well. SKC, great academy, they draw well. Real Salt Lake, did you see their crowd? Real Salt Lake Saturday night.
All out in a row, wasn't it?
It looked great. Yeah, I mean, and it was not an illegitimate sellout. It was a big time, every seat full sellout for a big match out there.
It wasn't before, and look at it, they do have a good academy, but also look at the other side. They made a run last year. They've started out hot. They've got new ownership. Everything's buzzing.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
it's the hot place to be.
That's exactly right. And again, what else is going on in Salt Lake City right now other than the Jazz?
You got that going.
So, look, it is okay. It is okay if Major League Soccer is going to be a market that's having its success in, the mid-sized markets as opposed to the major markets. Atlanta will be their major market anchor, perhaps. Yeah. But, I mean, if you're having success in Minneapolis, that's a top 20 market. That's good. Austin, I think, is top 40. Kansas City, I think, is top 40.
34, yeah.
Yeah. Orlando, I think, is top 40-ish.
They're a tri-market. They're 17.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Portland, Seattle's going to be a large market anchor. They aren't necessarily a major market, but they're a very large market. That's okay. I mean, you can be absolutely fine and viable as a business because, look at how well the SEC does. What's the biggest market that the SEC is in? Baton Rouge?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, Knoxville.
Don't say anything about Athens being close to Atlanta because people will get mad.
I mean, Nashville, obviously. But but Nashville's not going to be confused for Chicago as far as TV market size.
Right. I agree. Alex Bassine, I think, has nailed it with every front office needs to have a 10-foot banner hanging in their lobbies that says "Sell FOMO."
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Yes. Great comment, Alex, because that's what it is. And I think that's what it's become. And I think that's what we're hearing. I'm hooked and I don't want to miss this again.
That is across the board in American soccer. That's you go down the ladder, you go to USL Championship, you go to USL League One, you go to NPSL. That is it. It is. And so many people have told stories about bringing somebody to a game, bringing a parent, bringing a family member, bringing a friend, and them getting hooked because of the experience. And when we talk about, and I bring this up a lot because I do think it's really important. You mentioned it to a degree a little bit earlier, Mike, with saying that at times there's a lot of negativity in American soccer and the way that it's covered, the way it's talked about. I think the way it's presented by people who are thoroughly invested in it. There's a lot of negativity around it. If we're in the game, if we make a living in it, if we put our time into it, like supporters do everywhere, we have a responsibility. And some of that responsibility is creating that environment that people don't want to miss out on. Some of that responsibility is bringing that new person to the game or telling that new person about it, giving them reasons to get hooked. If we want it to grow, we do still have that responsibility. Like, you don't think about that if you're a college football fan because it's so easy to do it. People do it, but it's so easy to, because it's easy to share the crazy stories about, Maction or whatever's going on in the SEC and the tailgate culture. Like, people are advocates for the game because they enjoy that life.
Right.
I want American soccer to have that more of come to the game, meet people, hang out. It's a fun game. It's a competitive game. Team's in a run to win the championship this year. We got a big rival coming. We don't like Greenville. We don't like Chattanooga. We don't like Tormenta. They're coming. We're going to boo them. Like, all of that stuff with the experience, that needs to be the mindset of American soccer rather than, the TV rating's not good. The Premier League. The TV contract. The attendance in this place isn't good. Like, we want it to grow and we need to work on those things. But when all of the presentation is, there's no FOMO with that. I don't want any part of that.
You turn people away when you have that kind of approach. Even the fans that are more than the casual ones, Mike, you sit there and all you hear is, you don't want to be a part of that negative, man.
No, of course not. If I did, I'd root for Vanderbilt. Like, I don't want that. Like, come on. No, and again, like, I think there's a difference, and this is important. I think there is a difference between covering the league objectively, which you can do,
Yeah.
And the league is not perfect, and you can cover its flaws and talk about its flaws and present its flaws. But when I see the lead writer for a major national publication um, describe Major League Soccer as a quote weird league or a quote quirky league, why on earth would I continue to read your column and or your article? Why? Like, okay, well, you said it's a weird league. I don't want to watch that. And it's not just, I'm not talking about a particular national publication, although I think the tone from, that publication basically from A to Z tends to be rather negative in the way it covers Major League Soccer on a league basis. But I'll even say, like, the league itself, some of the content that comes from the league itself is negative. And I think you have to be really, really careful. There's a difference between being objective, but I do think there is this vibe in some of the content that comes from the league that, oh, this team stinks. This team's underperforming. This team's
sells,
clueless.
though, Mike.
Say that again, John?
Some folks think that snark sells these days.
Maybe it does.
By being snarky and edgy.
I think but it sells for the person who's being snarky. It doesn't sell for the product. Like,
yeah, and that's
voice
the
of
thing.
College football is not that. The voice of the NFL is not that. Do you have those people? Do you have snarky people who cover it? Sure.
Yeah.
But in general, it feels like the coverage of most of the leagues in this country from its core of media is celebratory, is excitement. It's
right.
Look at this is great.
Well,
like, we'll get negative when it needs to get negative, but it's not constantly negative.
And I think part of the problem too is, and again, like, I'll just call out the league directly. I think the league has put content creators in a position where they have to be analytical, and that's not necessarily the job they need to have. And look, I understand the league's trying to create content because, sadly, the league's national TV partners are not doing their job in producing content outside of games. So the league has kind of had to take that on itself. But I think you get into kind of a sticky wicket when you make your content creators have to analyze the product, because a lot of time just, naturally analysis is going to come off as being negative. So I'm not saying the league has to just be 100% promotional, but I think the lens through which the league is producing content needs to be more positive. So anyhow, and I'm seeing a lot of comments on the Twitch pitch that I agree with. I think, again, this conversation, I don't think started because we were talking about the new TV deal. And
I don't know where it started. We're just talking.
I will say this. This is really important. The next national TV partner, whether it's still ESPN or if it's Univision or Turner or whoever, has got to have buy-in to do more than just the games.
Give me storytelling.
Yeah. And give me, Jason and I have talked about this. Give me something similar to what NBC does after the Premier League matches end on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a studio show with some highlights, but more analysis and yes, John, storytelling and features, and do that.
Some fun, but not just funny. Like,
right?
There's gotta be meat to it. I think at times American soccer's too funny.
Yeah, don't make it some of those post-game shows that we saw after, like, Nations League or Gold Cup on Paramount Plus. Like, that got a little too silly. It doesn't have to be like that. But you need to have TV partners who are doing more than just cutting you a check, that they're going to be promoting the games. By the way, in prime time, they've got to be promoting the games, and they have to be producing secondary content that's going to enhance the audience for an actual match.
100%. I mean, it's a format as proven as anything in sports. As a kid, I had Braves games to watch. I was a huge baseball fan as a kid. Braves and Cubs games because they were easily accessible. Mm-hmm. Watched games all the time. But where I really got hooked into baseball as a whole, and I was one of those kids that could tell you the starting lineup of every team in the National League and probably mimic their batting stance when I was 8, 9, 10. I got hooked on it because of the games of the week and the way they were presented. And biggest thing this week in baseball,
Bingo.
having something like that to where, okay, I don't see the California Angels all the time, or I don't see the Houston Astros all the time, but hey, I know who their big players are. I know this, I know that. We don't have enough of that. It's one reason why on our Atlanta United coverage, and credit to everybody at the station for allowing Mike and I to do it. It's why we commit in pregame and postgame a segment about the games of that weekend. And we talk about the teams around the league, because you need to get hooked into your team, of course, but you got to know why the team coming to town matters. You got to know who the players are to watch. You got to know what the stories are elsewhere, because we do for all the other leagues. We do for college sports. We know what's happening. It increases our interest.
Yeah,
and our emotional investment.
We have a host here at the radio station who came to me a couple of weeks ago and said, I want to do a segment not about Atlanta United, but about the rest of the league.
Love it.
Yes, and he said it's because the only way that we're going to get people to understand and enjoy what Atlanta United has, the challenges they face on a week-to-week basis, is to actually kind of describe what's going on elsewhere around the league in the same way that we
of the surroundings that you have.
100%. And I was really pumped up to hear that.
I love that.
You're not getting that enough. You're certain, even in this market. I mean, Jason and I try, but I think even in this market, I mean, you don't get a lot of that. And some of it is because the content just doesn't exist right now. Like, for example, Soccer Down Here is a great podcast, and you guys do an outstanding job of talking about everything in the league. But how many other kind of team-oriented podcasts out there do the same? I don't know if there's a lot of that. Now, granted, I don't get to hear everyone's podcast, but I don't think there's enough of that.
A lot of local.
I would love to see, something like what you guys do with Soccer Down Here, independently produced, not produced by the league, independently produced. That's an MLS podcast. And I know there are a few out there, but someone who's going to do it on a daily basis and really dig in and, respectfully, not let things in Europe intrude into the podcast, not let things in other parts of the world intrude into the podcast. Like we've talked about, I think last week on Stoppage Time, someone asked us, Jason, what's our favorite podcast? And I said, I don't really listen to too many podcasts, but I do really, really like Counterattack.
Mm-hmm.
And Counterattack's a great show, but they talk a lot about what's going on in England.
Yeah,
and they talk a lot about what's going on in Europe. If we had a Counterattack type show only about Major League Soccer, produced independently, not produced by the league, I'd love that. I'd listen to that every day. I'd probably learn a whole lot, and Jason wouldn't have to teach me everything anymore. I could actually
you and me both, brother.
Could give him a night off every day.
Dios mio. I'm not going to give you an afternoon off because we got stoppage time at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. And I think, look, we'll kind of go back and reassess what happened on Saturday. I think, we're at kind of a natural, a little more than 10% of the way into the season. We've had 4 matches, kind of a large enough sample size now. We can kind of assess the state of the team, which I think is good. It's not exactly where they want to be, but they haven't done much damage to themselves right now on the table. They're only 3 points out of first, and they can play a lot better, and they're going to get a lot healthier. So we're going to get into that 2 p.m. today on Facebook and Twitch for Stoppage Time.
Very cool. Well, I'll talk to you then. You going to come out to the Twos game on the weekend?
I'm going to try, on Sunday, right?
Yeah, Sunday night.
Great.
Looks like it'll be a good one.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. I'm going to try. I might have to bring a jacket, it looks like, but definitely going to try to get out there on Sunday.
Excellent. Well, I'll be talking to you on Stoppage Time, and we'll see you on Friday as well.
All right, guys. See you.
Be good.
All right, final call for questions. There's been a few. I'm going to let John bounce through the comments and questions. We'll go for just a few more minutes. Again, Stoppage Time, 2 o'clock. That'll be an hour. That'll be almost all Atlanta United focused. But kind of to wrap up my thoughts on all of this, some of it does mirror like the evolution of SDH as well, because when we started, it was very Atlanta United centric, and it was very soccer in the South centric. And yes, we do talk about stuff around the world. I don't spend a lot of time, and I have fun with it. And I think you guys realize that, of laughing about England from time to time and laughing about different leagues and things. But where we talk about that stuff, generally, it's either because there's some kind of a tie here, or it's just because it's a soccer show and it's happening in soccer and you need to know. We try to pick the stuff. I don't want to spend 30 minutes breaking down West Brom and Norwich. No offense to West Brom and Norwich fans, but I don't want to break that down. That's not what our show is. If it's a big game and it's important, we'll mention what happened. We'll talk a little bit about it. We'll talk about the business side of it, because I think that's where you get overlaps with American soccer a lot more. We'll talk about those things. But this show has kind of evolved into more of a soccer show set in Atlanta that covers the country we're in, the region we're in, and where things intersect with it, because I do think the context is important. I love to hear that a host at 92.9 wants to do an MLS segment. They do one for the NFL. Dukes and Bell do, the NFL Blitz, and they talk about the NFL, not always Falcons related. That's great. NFL, you get people hooked on it. One, because of gambling, which is a big part of it. Two, because of fantasy football, another big part of it. And you follow other games, and you follow the league as a whole. MLS, we don't have that enough. I think some of the TV ratings display it, although TV ratings are becoming a little outdated in ways of measuring interest, as I think everybody's starting to learn over time. You're going to see that kind of deviate into a whole bunch of different ratings and measures of investment and returns on investment and all of that. But I like where MLS is going. It is not perfect by any stretch. I do want the conversation around it to be different. Katie Weaver, you mentioned something that I wanted to use here before we get into questions. You mentioned that, like, when I talk about the Argentine League, a lot of times I will talk about quirkiness or weirdness or craziness. Generally there, I'm talking about the format, and I don't do it to detract from the product, because ultimately, and when I do mention the Argentine League, I'm like, you should watch this player. You should watch this game. This is fun. This game is good. Yeah, the format of the league and how they've changed it every 5 years or every 2 years or every 5 months is a little crazy, and we'll have fun with that. But it's not to detract. And I think at times when we talk about weirdness of MLS, somebody mentioned embracing MLS After Dark, which I'm starting to see talked about more as a good thing. That's cool. That's Maction. That's, the craziness of some of the trips in the SEC, some of the trips in college football. All of that is great. It is crazy, but hey, this is fun. Enjoy this. Embrace it. Watch it. I think at times in MLS, it's this is weird. This is stupid. This is dumb. I mean, when you see national writers say it isn't even a really serious soccer league, that's not embracing the fun and weirdness of it. There's weird things about it. There's weird things about how San Jose plays. It's fun. Watch it. It's crazy. Like, enjoy that. And with Argentina, that's the way I try to present it a lot of times, because I enjoy that league. It's fun. But yeah, you got to stay on top of how they're going to change the format every year.
Yes.
That part's weird. Quirky to celebrate fun and get people embraced is absolutely fine. And Maction is a prime example. Like, Maction, watching the MAC, watching the Fun Belt was not a thing. Like, nobody watched it.
Mm-mm.
Why is it on Tuesday nights in college football? Because nobody was watching it. Why does people watch it? Because crazy things might happen. But you're getting people to come and enjoy it. And then you're getting hooked. That's where MLS needs to use the fun factor and the quirky factor and the crazy factor. That's how it's used. In this coverage nationally, in general, not everybody, not every single thing, not all the time. Please don't play that game, because we'll drive ourselves crazy. But too often in general, it is, this is bad, this is dumb, this is weird dumb, this is not good. It's not, this is crazy and fun, and you should be part of it. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. And I don't want American soccer conversation to be so negative. That's why I get mad about the USMNT hashtag. It's why I get mad about Twitter being a toxic place after games that don't go your way. It sucks. It doesn't need to be that way. That turns people off. when everything is negative, when anonymous people on Twitter attack people and make up lies and block people and then make up more lies. That is not good for growing the game. What does it actually do? Nothing. That's destructive. If you're involved in the game, if you want the game to be better than it was when you started, if you want it to be better for the next generation, you can report on it. You can be objective. You can do all the things that good journalists do. But you can also not be so negative all the time to try to score points on the Bird app. And you cannot give life to anonymous Twitter accounts who spew negativity and toxicity and, frankly, affect people's mental health. Don't waste your time with that. You want to grow the game? If you're out there putting your time into it, really do it. Really do it. Embrace the fun. Get people to watch a San Jose game with you at night. They might be laughing the whole time, but they're going to have a good time. And you can talk about that. And you can talk about all these crazy things around the league, because there are some crazy things in any league. MLS has maybe got more than others. Cool. Let's have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's grow it. Bring more people to the party. All right, what do we got that we need to clean up on before we finish?
Speaking of one thing, bringing more people to the party, Storm Chaser Kevin says one thing can trigger it. His was Dempsey scoring seconds into the World Cup that he tuned into just for the heck of it. Then shortly thereafter, Atlanta United was announced, and it was all over.
Well, I mean, the Dempsey and the Landon Donovan goal in 2010 is a big factor here. You can't plan that. You can't plan a great player. You can't plan a big moment in a game. But then you have to capitalize on them when they do. The Donovan one, for example, that was the, miracle on ice moment. That was that I grew up with, and I probably paid attention to hockey because I remember the miracle on ice moment as a little kid. It probably opened a door for me to do it. It didn't hook me, but it opened a door. The Donovan goal did that for a lot of people, whether it's Dempsey, whether it's different players. Eddie Johnson has been that for a lot of people. There were a lot of players before that. There were the Bruce Murrays, who was that for me in a lot of ways. There was Jimmy Banks and Desmond Armstrong. There was Tony Meola. There was John Harkes, who was my favorite as a kid. Kobe Jones, Eric Winalda. There was that generation. There was, before that, smaller numbers, Ricky Davis. Ricky Davis is one of the best ever American players. Hugo Perez. So many guys that were that, maybe in smaller frames. Dempsey had a bigger platform. What he did in Europe gave him a bigger platform. The Donovan moment in World Cup 2010, viral moment, transcendent. But how do you capitalize on that stuff? Once people like Kevin, who see it and see something and get hooked, and they want to learn more, how easy is it for them to do that? I mention it all the time in this, and it because I think it's important. The women's soccer survey before the Women's World Cup in 2019, one of the major aspects for people to follow and become diehards about women's soccer was access to information. And it still is. And look, I've mentioned it. There's teams in the NWSL who need to embrace it a whole lot better and put more information out there. There's teams in MLS who need to put more information out there and have more content for people to consume. That's the number one thing. If I get hooked and I want to be a fan, how easy is it for me to find stuff? It became very easy for me to find stuff about the Argentine League when I really got hooked. It became easy for me to find stuff about La Liga when I got hooked, when David Beckham, who was one of my favorites, went there. It's like, okay, cool. Oh, I can watch the games because I have it on my cable system now. Great. Cool, I'm in. And I get hooked. That's how I am. A little bit of an addictive personality when it comes to information. That's how a lot of people are. There's info out there and you can get people hooked. You got to find it. That's the next step from the moment that you can't always manufacture.
Burns says the secret to soccer fandom's obviously the in-person experience, not the TV watching. Some leagues, like the Bundesliga, have never forgotten that. Others have.
The in-person experience is what will keep people coming. The TV watching can keep furthering the emotional investment, because you're going to have games on the road that, look, in this country, you're not going to be able to go to all the road games unless you're rich or have access to transportation or whatever. It's a little more difficult. So the TV watching does play a little bit bigger role. I think sports on TV maybe is a bigger thing in the U.S. than it is in some other countries around the world too. But it can't replace the in-person experience. It can augment it. It can supplement it. It can especially augment the overall depth of the emotional investment around the league, because you're not going to be able to go to all the games around the league. If you go to your game and then watch the big games, cool, you're really going to be hooked and really going to be invested. But the in-person product is the most important. It's number one. That's why I always come back to, you're playing well, you have a good product on the field, you're going to draw. If you're not drawing when that's happening, there's a problem somewhere. If you are a bad product on the field and not winning, you're probably not going to draw very much. And until you fix the winning, everything's temporary.
Sharif says, if I may humbly say so as well, my friend from South Carolina who did not know a thing about soccer, took him to an Atlanta United game 6 years ago, became a fan of the sport, remains a soccer fan now, and has started to watch other games from other teams as well. The U.S. soccer product throughout the league is a lot more than the traditional media outlets have made it out to be on the national stage.
Yeah, it's growing. It still needs to grow. There's a lot of room for it to grow. There's a lot of room for Atlanta United fans to watch the big Seattle, Austin game from the weekend. There's a lot of room for New York fans to watch games from the West Coast. Like, that stuff has to continue to grow. But yeah, it is. It's so different than it was. And at times where we get hung up, and I do it, I get ticked off because of somebody's coverage. I get ticked off of negativity. I get ticked off from stuff. But when I really think back 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it's not even comparable. So, I mean, the growth is great. There's so much more room to grow, and I think it can get a lot better. But yeah, we've come so far so fast.
Kevin, about Carrollton specifically, trying to have the community experience be the draw to get people into Georgia Storm games. Carrollton's still pretty traditional, not into soccer, but there is huge civic pride. Mm-hmm. We can tap into that to get people to come check out a game. We may hook them.
Yeah, it's getting them to the game, and it's having the game be a good enough level, and having the experience in the venue be good enough for them to come back. It's twofold, because if you get people there but they don't have a good time, they're probably not going to come back. If you get people there and they have a good time, they're going to come back. So it's working on both ends of it. It's just something that can happen in every community in this country at every level. It's just finding it.
Pilgrim says, I think each market's media has to go all in too. We do great here in Atlanta. And to your point, to the point about Philly's doing that now, but MLS should get their block in these locations, just like NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, et cetera.
That sounds great, but you got to convince people to give you that. And in some markets, you're not going to get that straight out of the gate. And also, the MLS teams in those markets have to continue to work at it. They can't just give up. They can't just say, like, it's New York, and of course we can't get the coverage we expect to get, or we can't get the coverage that the Islanders or the Devils or the Nets get. Well, you're not going to straight away. If you just give up, you're never going to get it. You have to continue to work at it. You have to build relationships. So much of it is relationships. If you get those people out to a game, again, give them a good experience, treat them well, make it easy for them to cover your team, you're probably going to get more coverage and get people hooked. And again, if you're winning, you're going to get more people interested. I think Philadelphia has been a prime example of that. It's still not. I mean, no, and that's fine. And don't, like, I don't care. I want growth. I'm not going to measure it. Oh, Philly's not getting the same attention that the Flyers get, so they should disband the team. No, shut up. Like, it's better than it's ever been because they put a good product on. Jim Curtin is talking more in the local media. He's a spicy personality. People like to hear him. He's doing radio interviews, which he wasn't doing before they started this run. 2019, I remember, like, wow, okay, wait a minute. He's doing drive time radio interview? I didn't even know they would give him the time. That's great. You're seeing an increase because the product is better on the field. They're winning.
Pilgrim also says, I wish more pundits, in quotation marks, would embrace the whole MLS After Dark type jokes. Like, it is what it is.
I was talking about earlier. Yeah. It's embrace it in a fun way of, hey, come watch it. You can't make it like all a clown show, because there's only so long you'll watch the clown show. Everybody likes the clown show for the most part. I know some people don't like clowns. In general, people will, okay, cool. If that's all it is, no, not going to work. And MLS isn't that. But you've got to use it the right way. If that's your entry point of, hey, it's a Saturday night, it's the summer, you're probably not watching whatever baseball game is going to take 4 hours if you're potentially invested in watching a soccer game. A couple hours. San Jose's crazy. They might score 5. They might give up 5. There might be 3 red cards. Come hang out and watch this with us. That's the kind of stuff that you can use it to then say, okay, now that was crazy, but this team is really good, and this is a really good game. And man, this player, Carlos Vela, amazing player. Now let's watch LAFC. Now you came in for the clowns, but now you're enjoying the rest of the circus.
Byrne says all of what we've been talking about reinforces his gut feeling that the league should not cater too much to TV networks, time slots, etc. Cater to your actual fans who show up, create the atmosphere, etc., to make and keep them happy. Worry about TV ratings after that.
It's a balance. You shouldn't ignore your people who are the most invested, that are your current fans. Not at all. And I'm not in any way saying that. You should look for opportunities to bring new people to the party. But it is a balance. It's absolutely a balance. And if you go too far away from what you already have, then yeah, you lose what you have. And you might not get as much on the other side. That's any kind of rebrand. You get into that situation of, all right, where am I coming from? If I rebrand it and change it, how many people might I lose and how many people might I gain? So in terms of this format and TV and catering to time slots and that kind of stuff, you got to look for the growth. You got to look for the growth and not lose the people that you already have. Okay, last one.
Oh, last one. Then
Last one.
We'll go to Nick's. Nick's wants a preview of the Twos game tonight with Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay's tough. They're physical, ton of experience. They will play very direct. Atlanta will try to play. Tampa Bay won't press high all the time, but they're a good team in jumping into passing lanes and causing turnovers. Atlanta United 2 is going to have to be really careful in those moments. But they've got to be themselves. They've got to play their game. Can't have an early red card either. You got to be able to press and create turnovers your way. When these teams played a lot in 2019 and 2020, they were really good games because it's two very different approaches to the game. Tampa Bay was the better team in those games, but Atlanta pushed them as much as any team in the league because of the clash of styles. I'm looking forward to what Atlanta can do tonight. Robbie Mertz, player I just always enjoy watching. Noah Cobb, continuing to grow in composure. Noah Cobb. Efrain Morales coming off his best game as a pro, I think. Should be a fun one tonight, but it's a very difficult one for Atlanta United too. We've seen Mikey Ambrose training with the Twos this week in the videos the team has put out. I would expect him to start tonight, be an anchor for a very young Atlanta United 2 team. And I will just tease this for people out there. When we have stoppage time later at 2:00, I am under the impression that we will have something to talk about on stoppage time related to Atlanta United and Atlanta United 2. So stay tuned.
There you go. That's a tease.
And it's not just the game. Stay tuned.
That's a tease.
But that'll do it for us. Stoppage time 2:00, facebook.com/929 the game, twitch.tv/stoppage time 929. And then tonight at 7:30 on ESPN Plus, Atlanta United 2 and the Tampa Bay Rowdies. John and I will have your call. Mucha platiel.
Mucha platiel.